So Sister Afshan, please enlighten us about how people who are struggling in their marriages currently can find a place of resolution and a cooperation in their marriage.
Quite a comprehensive statement, really. I suppose it's really good to just understand why we're calling it the modern marriage. I mean, what contributes to a modern marriage? Why are we even saying that? What is the relationship that we have in Islam as husband and wife? So there's many things. I think definitely the environment plays a big part in us changing some of our perspective with regards to the marriage these days. I could list all of them, but I presume there's going to be other questions around it. But yeah, I think that's why suddenly we're calling it the modern marriage, because now two people, obviously both spouses may be working. So there's a financial element that's coming into play. A lot, obviously, people that I counsel, both spouses are working. So the roles are more shared now. So I suppose that's the biggest thing that I see. I wouldn't call it a modern marriage. I would call it, you know what, teamwork.
Teamwork.
That's what I would call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Teamwork.
Absolutely, mashallah. In most cases, but I think the marriage unit, the family unit has definitely changed. The dynamics have changed. I think you painted a beautiful picture, but I think the majority reality is slightly different. When they say modern marriage, that's ideal, what you described. But what they get instead are these conflicting roles. What you call shared roles, I call it becomes conflicting roles. And most families are not lasting. I mean, I'll put into perspective. Before I do, brothers and sisters, your questions, your comments, I promise we won't ignore any of them. I know one or two of you looked a bit frustrated in your comments. Please be patient with us. It's a lot to get through. But the best thing about today, and the hardest thing for you, is that this is just the first part. We've just started. There's so much to cover. We got many days. We've got to do different weekends, and you have to make the time to attend. So if you pop in for 15 minutes on YouTube, say your comment and leave, and then next month you're like, oh, I tried to address it, those Muslims didn't address it. Well, that's really just your fault. We all need to make our efforts. I'm going to ask you for some patience here. We're definitely going to address all of today's questions right after, inshallah.
I want to jump into a question because it ties very well with Sister Afshan's topic. We have a question here from one of our viewers who said, my question is, why are Muslim communities expecting that once a woman is married, her own parents and her own siblings should not matter anymore, and that she should only live for her in-laws, especially the mother-in-law, serving her all the time? She cannot have her own home. Her children should not connect much with her mother, the mother side of the family. And, you know, there's a level of oppression that is felt. So can we address this in current times? So obviously this is a practice which has been practiced for many generations. So nowadays, marriages that are going through this, is this something that, you know, we should just, you know, chin up and women get on with it? Or how should a Muslim be addressing such circumstances?
Oh, alhamdulillah, they'll have to read my third project, inshallah, which is all about in-laws.
Where do they find this project?
The thing is, sorry? Just make dua that it gets completed quickly, alhamdulillah.
Oh, you're still working on it. I was saying, where could they find it? So you're still working on it.
I'm still, well, I've worked on it, but it's just obviously gone for, inshallah, to be published.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Because, you know, every day, I mean, times have changed, people's concepts have changed, and suddenly we're the modern Muslims and the modern marriage, but yeah, any part in Islam. This is the address that if somebody comes to me because, sorry, couldn't you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was cutting out, but it's fine now. Carry on, Sister Afshan, carry on.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying that this is obviously a very cultural practice, and if any cultural dynamics they clash with Islam, then obviously Islam takes priority. So, you know, we have to change our thinking. One of the things I will say is that, which is quite worrying, is that, okay, if we are from a certain area, or we're from, we're brought up in a certain country, and then we have these kind of thoughts or cultures, but then we move and we broaden our horizons and we become professionals, and yet we're still holding on to these cultural practices. This is quite worrying. I hope that's answered the question.
I think that it also falls into the category of not modern marriage, wouldn't you say? Because that's very traditional. Those are very cultural things. They're not Islamic practices. They're more to do with, I wouldn't call that a modern marriage at all. In fact, that there is a belief in certain cultures that do that, where the sister-in-law and others, or the sisters, her own sisters, the bride sisters are not important, or her mom or her dad, etc. But I would definitely not call that a modern marriage.
How would we address, Salah? What is the best approach in addressing these situations? Because this seems quite common, taking place in many households. And when a daughter-in-law speaks out against these kind of things, she's kind of ostracized by society, and she's kind of made to feel like she is breaking up the family. So is there an advice that you could provide? What is the best way to approach these kind of situations?
The best way is approach the husband, because it's his job, obviously, to protect, being the leader of the family, to protect obviously his own family, and also protect his wife. If he feels this is an oppressive situation where she's been told she can't do this or she can't do that by his parents, it's really up to him to stand up and say, well, this is right. See, this is the problem, is that we need to educate the brothers on how to, because it's a very difficult situation. It's either mother or wife. It's not easy for them. I do understand. So perhaps addressing this on a larger scale with obviously the brothers, and so these things don't happen. But as long as the daughter is concerned, the thing is, at the end of the day, you're here to please Allah. If you're being oppressed by anybody, and I hear some really, really horrific stories, then you have to say to yourself, well, is it better that I am isolated but I'm okay, or do I stay in this marriage and could continue to be oppressed? And then they come and see me and they're having a nervous breakdown. You've got to make a choice.
I think Sister Salma was addressing this a bit earlier when she said that while you, Sister Afshan, said that the brothers need to be addressed and they need to be taught. Well, obviously, it's our mom that teaches us. And she was addressing how moms and mothers and women in the families, they just repeat the cycles, even though they know better. They stick to the tradition, the culture. And again, this plays a part in the laziness of Muslims, the complacency of Muslims, which, if it's not to do with my school education, which is going to make me money, which is going to pay the bills, and the basics of knowledge of just feeling some spirituality for Ramadan and Hajj, and that's about it. So then you're going to have these actual real core issues that when you were studying the fiqh of marriage, the fiqh of divorce, the fiqh of talaq, etc., all the different usul, and when these topics came up, most of the people were absent from those classes because they thought that doesn't pertain to me. But when they got married, they found that stuff could have really helped a lot. So when we're educating the brothers, I think the brothers and sisters wanting to be educated are very few. The vast majority are not learning. So we rely upon their moms to teach them. So there is a level of common sense there that this is wrong and that's right. That's in the heart. But unfortunately, as Sister Salma said, many of the women, majority, they just repeat the cycle and they just teach the same misogyny and the same type of practices onwards. It's like, that's what we do. But I think that there is an opposite danger as well when we discuss modern marriages, which you described a beautiful picture of shared roles and shared responsibilities. I just imagined the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's what he did. He shared responsibilities. It was a beautiful teamwork, the way you put it. It was idealistic, and some people are blessed like that. But modern marriages, let's just look at the statistics. The number of divorce cases has always been there. We've always had divorces. It's a mercy from Allah in extreme emergency situations where a couple need to be separated. But with modern marriages, this new definition of what many people think it is, it's actually divorces equal, on par with what the Western world has as divorce rates. It's it's skyrocketed.
Yeah, it is worrying. Sister Afshan, do you, obviously you talk to a lot of couples and you are counseling a lot of people in these situations. What are the common reasons and issues that Muslim couples are having that can easily be overcome, that are making our divorce rates kind of on par with that of the non-Muslim communities?
Definitely confusion of roles.
Yeah.
I think people aren't really too sure what their roles are, and there's always this kind of element, well, I'm doing this and you're not doing this. So there's a lot of you'd be surprised, there's a lot of practical stuff that people are getting divorced over, from, for example, lack of responsibility, chores, housekeeping, organization skills, and these things all add up. Obviously, there are other factors that obviously people, I think the main thing is that this, for men, there's a lack of respect in a marriage. And this message, we know this is mentioned in the Quran, a lack of respect. For women, is a lack of affection and time. These are the main things that are sometimes the key, if I could say, I see a lot. And, you know, subhanAllah, let's mention in the Quran anyway. So this is the main reason why people are getting divorced. Besides, there's many other factors, but I'm just speaking on one particular thing that I feel is, because that relates to many other things. Lack of respect will, you know, have a ripple effect on everything else in the relationship as well.
That's a really good point. That's a fantastic point, subhanAllah. So you have, I'm trying to get my head around it. That was quite a big, profound statement. Trying to get my head around it. So we're talking about a couple, and the man feels disrespected. I'm not even sure if that's enough of a word. But when it comes to the woman, her affection and her love and the time to devote to her, I think that's a type of respect as well, because if a man respected the woman, he would know what her needs are and how to, there's a respect on both sides, and there is a dishonor on both sides. And I think that creates a lot of conflict, because now you come to the world of tug of war. Let's get to it now. You've got the brothers saying exactly what you said. We're not respected enough. I'm the man of the house. My word should be obeyed, etc. From his wife to his daughters. And then the opposite, where the women will feel he's so cold. Where's the love? And the woman now is educated with a new ideology at school and in college and uni, which makes her feel, she forgets she needs that love and affection. And now she feels she needs the same respect he has. It's almost like as if I deserve the same respect. We don't need obedience. We don't need a hierarchy. We are equal. And it's a completely confused role, where I think the women, or many of the sisters, confuse what they actually need with what they are told they should want. And with men, subhanAllah, I think the problem on the men's side is more practical and practicing, meaning it's not that we don't know. Does that make sense? It's not that we don't know. It's just there's a very false arrogance, a very unjustified arrogance in men that needs to be addressed in regards to their women at home. Instead of the Prophet ﷺ's hadith, the best amongst you are those who are best to their families, and I am a best amongst you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that so both play a part. So it's reciprocal. So obviously, if the man feels respected and listened to, and the wife is given the love and affection, then that cycle continues. But if each of them aren't getting what they need, then obviously there's going to be a problem, isn't there? So it's like, you're right, it is a right of respect as well, but one feeds off the other. And I think this is really important for me to say this, that this is why the Prophet ﷺ, I think he mentioned manners, and it gave it such heaviness on the scale, having good manners, not getting angry, because I think having those manners is just so important. It just diffuses the situation, and there's a mutual respect for both parties, which then deflates the situation for it to not to escalate to how it escalates. So I do agree with this. It's a respect, but it's like one has to play off the other, if that makes sense.
So in a situation, obviously, we get questions sent from both opposite ends, extreme, where you have a wife that's very, very unhappy with their husband. husband has all the characteristics which, you know, would be contradictory towards Islam, and she's in this relationship and she's trying her best, and it's obviously affecting her iman. She has nowhere to go because people kind of see her as, you know, be grateful you're married, or if you get married, who will marry you, and what about your children? So she's got all these things kind of piled up against her. And then on the other end, you have a man who's in a situation where he has a wife which is unruly, doesn't respect him. There's no, you know, there's no position in the household for him of a level of respect. Now, obviously, both parties do not want to divorce. They love their spouse and they want to keep their home together. How then do you get through to somebody who is essentially gaslighting these problems, and not appreciating or feeling that these problems exist, and then this other spouse is kind of stuck now thinking, I don't know what to do. I'm trying my best here, but I don't know what to do. And we have a lot of people in these kind of between a rock and a hard place situation. How do we then deal with such spouses and make them see that what they're doing and their actions are harmful and wrong?
I think the main thing is always you have to reach out to somebody, isn't it? You have to speak. So sometimes the husband or the wife don't want to listen to each other. But perhaps, you know, obviously speaking to somebody, you know, speaking to somebody with knowledge, imam, getting marriage counseling. I think just reaching out, perhaps a family member that, you know, that will speak to them and listen. I mean, that's usually the first thing to do, is actually speak to somebody. Because say, for example, if I'm speaking to somebody and I can get them to see a perspective, a way of thinking to the problem, or offer them a solution, perhaps them talking together may not help. So the first thing is really to try to get some help. That's the only way forward, because otherwise you're stuck in this relationship and nobody's listening. And remember, sometimes people don't want to get help because they know where they're going wrong and they don't want to change. That also happens.
I think you beautifully put about, you kind of created a little cycle, whereas most of these topics are addressed men, women, and you kind of turned it into a circle, and you kind of said one is linked to the other. And I think that's where we have a problem. People are demanding this while other people are taking that.
Yes.
And no one has, I love how you put it once when it comes to Sharia. And I was asking this very genuine question that, isn't there something you dislike? What about something you dislike? And that's what it was. It was a subject of something a woman would dislike. So what if it's something you dislike? How does a woman overcome that? And your answer was, I trust the process. I trust Allah. He says he's got my back. He's going to look after me. He's got me at my best interest in the Quran. So I trust the process, not the men or the women. And I think that people, what do you say there, Sister Afshan? What do you think about that? How do we create that circle? How do we link those two things to create that circle?
The circle of, I mean, the two spouses, whether how
one needs
they
the other, they link to each other. But unfortunately, the complaints and arguments and requests are always one-sided, this side or that side. But really, it's like you said, if this one respects that one loves this one, it will respect that one, and this one will love that one. And that circle or that link is broken. So when that breaks, how do you reconnect it? I think that is a profound thing you said, and that really will create a potential cure for this disease. How would we do that? How do we bring it together?
Look, the main solution, the main things I work with when I'm working with couples, usually by the time they come to see me, communication has broken down. Sometimes communication has never actually happened because, again, this comes from our, this is very important that I said this, a lot of things I was about in my second book, a lot of things that are brought into the marriage aren't really about the marriage. They're about the way that you're parented, the way that you see your parents' marriage, the environmental factors you've seen growing up at a very young age. So it's for a child, it's like you, as soon as a child is born and it gets to a certain age, consciously or unconsciously, a tape button goes on. and then they replay that in them in their marriages. So sometimes that's, for me, that's what I have to work with. But the main thing is I teach how to communicate. When couples come to see me, I teach them how to and the way I teach them is that they get empathy for each other. So they walk in each other's shoes, which is very, very important. Yeah. So I make them feel, okay, if this happened to you, how would you feel? And there's certain tools that I teach for them to gain that empathy. And then obviously when they're sitting obviously with me and having the counseling, they have to listen. One of the rules is marriage counseling is one is talking, the other one has to listen. And then they'll say things like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. Oh, I didn't know when I was doing this how it affected you. Straight away you get the empathy. Yeah. And then you give them other tools too. So the main thing is really teaching someone to communicate, and you communicate in a respectful way. And so you have the element of respect that comes in. So that changes the whole dynamics. And in a few weeks' time, mashallah, they're talking and they come back with their homework, and alhamdulillah, things are improving. Yeah, that's not guaranteed. Sometimes people aren't meant to be together, and that's, like you said, a mercy from Allah. But 98%, I have to say, 98% times, if people have issues in the marriage, they can be resolved. If you're really committed, you accept, you do the work, and you trust Allah, you make lots of dua, you can. Especially with the children involved, we have to give it. We have to give it all. We have to.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I just want to touch upon the fact that Sister Afshan mentioned about counselling, and I actually think all couples should do counselling. If you look at the other wider community of the non-Muslims, they
for the smallest reason
they invest in therapy and counselling for their children, for their family, for their spouse. And it's really important to be able to, as Sister Afshan said, to be able to understand empathy and put walk in someone else's shoes, imagine how they're feeling, so that you can then have that communication. And in our community, there is, I think, especially with men, the suggestion of marriage counseling is almost like, oh, you're so shameful, you want to air your dirty laundry out to somebody we don't know. And, there's a stigma, isn't there, attached to when women reach out for help. Do you feel that stigma still exists? Is it breaking down? Are more men being open to being involved in therapy?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I have to say, in the last 2, 3 or 4 years, I've counseled more brothers than I've ever counseled in my 35 years of counseling. So that's a positive.
That is,
alhamdulillah.
That's great.
Yes, so I'm counseling brothers separately. I obviously offer phone sessions for brothers, and I'm counseling as a couple. People are coming, so slowly, alhamdulillah, the stigma is rising. Again, people understanding mental health, and I think a lot of it is to do with the ulama. They are touching on the mental health. They're talking about mental health. They're talking about depression, anxiety. So people are like, okay, the ulama are talking about this is something that is acceptable, and I don't know why we don't understand physical and mental health. Both are illnesses, both obviously are from Allah, and Allah's given us du'as. The Prophet gave us du'as for depression, for anxiety. They exist, but why are we in denial? I don't know. But alhamdulillah, I have to say, it's improving and people are coming. I would suggest people come for pre-marriage counseling, so deal with all the issues from childhood before they get married.
Yes.
That would bring that divorce rate down completely, inshallah.
I will say, no, absolutely, I agree.
Definitely. And I think what you've touched upon, Sister Afshan, as well, is a level of learning from our there's lights, alhamdulillah, learning from our previous generations, and there is a lot that didn't work, and we kind of believe if our parents were married for 50, 60 years, then that was a successful marriage. But we don't really get into the root of how our parents felt in that marriage, all the pressures, all the depression, anxiety, sadnesses, all the things that they could have felt. We just look at the longevity of it and say, well, if they could do that many years, then what they did must work. Do you think that's kind of the mentality that a lot of our current generation of couples are having, and they kind of need to realize that we need to relearn how marriages to work for today's society? I think people have realized a lot about the fact that obviously, look,
lot of people say to me, you know, clients say to me, I know my mom, she's really unhappy, but she couldn't leave because of financial reasons. You know, she was being oppressed by her, but she couldn't do anything because she didn't know the language. So I think people are aware that obviously, you know, you have more rights. Sisters are more educated, brothers are more educated, we have more rights. We can do a lot more with our lives. So I think people do understand that. I don't think they'll base everything on their own parents, but they realize why their parents stayed in the marriage. But just even that, if I look back, when I was a very young child and I was in this country, and I remember not long, well, perhaps a long time ago, you know, how even the non-Muslims, when it came to marriage, like the woman was at home, and I'm not saying this is the right thing, but I'm just telling you from this, what I experienced as a child of non-Muslims. Yeah, the woman was at home, she looked after the children, she'd have a home-cooked meal every time they come home. Everything that we deemed wrong was wrong then. There's morality, you know, and I don't want to give my age away, but it wasn't that long ago that these things were, and it was like, you know, they were doing that at that time, and the children were calmer. And although I know society puts this pressure on us and women have to work, and I always said to us, you know, if you can afford to, you've got children, just stay at home. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Just enjoy your children, enjoy your life at home, because the pressure that women are going through at the moment is causing a lot of problems, you know, within obviously the marriage, and because she's doing two roles sometimes. And brothers have to understand that if you're going to put that pressure on your wife, then you've got to step up, I'm afraid, and help out. So if that wasn't the question that you asked me, but I just wanted to share that.
No, no,
it really
it's
reminds
great.
me.
It's good. It's good that you mentioned that.
I had Brother Harun's comment I wanted to read. The oppressional link must be broken because the daughter-in-laws are essentially entering into emotional slavery and abuse. The husbands and their mothers are responsible for changing this. In English culture, the parents understand that when their children become adults, they need their own space. Unfortunately, under capitalism, the cost of living means that multi-generational families are squeezed into small apartments, and this creates other kinds of distress. So I think there is a different type of advice that should be given to people who are in one house as well. The mother-in-law, the father-in-law, the brother-in-law and his wife and his kids. I mean, it just depends. The dynamics are very different depending on who we're talking to.
Mm-hmm. Something that I see quite a lot.
I've got some comments here. We'll just go through. Bint Jamila says there is a hypocrisy in men and women that when they are outside,
yes,
mashallah, the people talk good, how good they are, but back in their houses there is less adab and akhlaq. Please give advice about this. Obviously, you've touched on the fact that manners are so emphasized in the deen, and you know the sister Bint Jamil, she has a point here that we have these manners outside the house, but when we come home, they kind of disappear. Why is that?
You know, I've seen people say to me, oh, I want to marry a practicing brother or a practicing sister. What does actually practicing mean these days? Because obviously, look, I speak to a lot of people. I speak to people who are obviously married to people of knowledge, and yet that knowledge is not being used at home. So there's something that I obviously I see quite a lot. You know, you see people who should have knowledge, and they should be obviously displaying that more at home, because the Prophet ﷺ, as you said, the one is best to their families. But it doesn't happen when they come home. They can be very irritable, angry, or you know, even perpetrate domestic violence. So this is obviously fear of Allah. What do? You have to understand that these people haven't understood that this knowledge hasn't reached the heart. For me, practicing, and may Allah make it that me one of them as well. That it's really that fear of Allah, that taqwa should be your you know what you call a compass, your moral compass, Islamic. It should be your own heart telling you, you know, I have to stand in front of Allah one day. I have to answer to this. Is it right what I'm doing? Is it wrong? And people just don't understand that sometimes what you're doing is wrong, and they'll just say, well, that's the way it is. But especially you have knowledge, you're going to be even more answerable because you learned that knowledge. But it's happening.
I want to advocate knowledge, my brothers and sisters. Seek knowledge, because I'm afraid that while Sister Afshan speaks absolute truth in that comment which she just made, but that bit about having taqwa of Allah, it applies the opposite as well. There's could be someone with tons of taqwa of Allah, and he abuses the hell out of his family because of it. So if you don't have knowledge of how to have taqwa of Allah, you will do the wrong thing with the sole intention, I'm pleasing Allah. But what you're doing is angering Allah. So there is a knowledge that is missing, my brothers and sisters. And the Sister Bint Jamil is spot on. I was just walking in the door just 2 days ago, and I put up that online video of myself and my little girl. She was emotional and stuff. I made this little video of her and I posted it up because I remember when I walked in, I was exhausted. I was in physical pain. I wasn't feeling well. I had a full day of work and I was actually in physical pain. I had some exercises that exhausted me. And then finally, when I got to the door, I hear all this screaming and noises, etc., between the little ones. And I had to take a minute and remember one of my shuyukh, may Allah give him Jannat al-Firdaus, may Allah preserve his health. And he said, when you come to the door of your house, stop and think. You've been out, you've been dealing with the world, and they have given you emotions, their chemistry, their feelings. You've taken it all on board. But when you come to the house, these people have not seen you all day. They had nothing to do with how you felt. So now it's time for you to now unload that before you walk in through the door. Because when you walk in through the door, these people deserve their rights, the family. And I think when you say taqwa, when you say people don't know, I think they do know. I just think they don't think about it. They don't make the dhikr. They think dhikr is subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. They don't realize dhikr of Allah is, what am I doing? Is it pleasing to Allah? And they don't stop and reflect that when I walk into this house, it should not be Assalamu alaikum, or oh, I'm in a bad mood, oh, I'm in pain. It should be Assalamu alaikum, I haven't seen you all day. And Sister Bint Jamil, that comment, I came home one day and sat a family down and I said, when you go outside, when you meet people, and I see this in my own relatives and stuff, how are you? Oh, so great. And you talk about the best about you, etc. And then you come home and you're like, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, go give me a glass of water. It's like, wait, that hypocrisy is more deserving at home than it is outside. Be a hypocrite at home. Pretend you love everyone. Pretend you're happy. Flood the house with fake joy. By Allah, eventually it'll become real, because laughter is contagious. And it will eventually, the smile of the sunnah will eventually be contagious and bring everyone to the right page. So I think what you guys have just done is kind of scratched on the surface on a whole other subject, which is the Islamic household, how it should be, the Muslim household.
We have another comment here, Sister Afshan. It is women will hear other women's stories and only hear the bad things that happen to women. And men will only hear stories from men and only hear the bad things towards men. So what this question is asking is, when we are in a situation where we are constantly having gossip sessions, men amongst men, women amongst women, we're always talking about the negativities of our spouses. And then obviously the response that you're getting back from your friends or your peers regarding the negativity you're applying and you're bringing back. So what is the importance? How important is it to take counsel from the right people or trust the right people in supporting your marital issues? Because I did notice something, Sister Afshan, is I'm a part of a lot of Muslim mother groups, and a lot of the conversation and comments are about women going through some awful marriages. May Allah make it easy on everybody, and it really breaks my heart. But the comments that follow and the advice that follows sometimes can be so shocking. If you could touch upon the kind of advice people are so readily to giving out to Muslim couples, and because I feel like this could be one of the major causes as to why there's so much miscommunication amongst two spouses.
I think, I mean, you said gossip. I mean, the thing is, when you need advice, brothers and sisters, just go to one person that you trust, that like, when this, I remember this one statement where somebody made that, when you have a friend and that friend reminds you of Allah, that's the best friend to have. May Allah give us those kind of friends. So, and you know that person, if they're a true, sincere friend, they'll offer you the right advice, even if you don't want to hear it. Because at the end of the day, if you have a true friend or a true relative, or you don't even have your sincere relationship, and that person wants you to enter Jannah, that's a sincere relationship. So if you're doing anything, and this is something I advise a lot of to brothers, as you mentioned about in-law situation, is when they see oppression going on, and they have to advise them, what do you want for your mother? All of us want Jannah for our family, especially for our mother who looked after us. So then you have to advise her in the most gentle manner that this is what you're doing is wrong. So go to people that will give you good advice and say, don't speak to 5 or 6 sisters. I disagree with this kind of comment thing that people put something up on their people, because everybody starts maybe talking about their own story or what's happened to them, and they may mix that advice according to their own experiences. They may be bitter, they maybe have gone through a bad divorce, or they're unhappy in their marriage. So that's not the right thing to do. Just go to one person that you really can trust, and they will give you the best advice, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I think Sister Anjum just said that, it's not just the men that can be harsh or whatever, it can be the women as well. And obviously
it works in both. It works. I think, brother, what you're saying is right, but I think when you have taqwa, or when you've acquired knowledge, the main thing is it has to be shown in action. Like you're saying, you go home, even though you don't feel like speaking or you're tired, but you do that because you do it for the sake of Allah, and that's important. You have to show that action. Whatever you learn has to come through the action. It's part of our deen, isn't it?
There's also the threshold of sabr. The threshold of
yes.
patience is here in Islam. It's supposed to be from the heart to the mind. And I think most men and most women, both, the threshold of patience is up here now. So it's like, I am patient because I haven't gotten angry at you because of this thing. But they forget the patience start that I'm walking into the house. I need to walk in with my heart. I need to walk in with a smile. I need to greet my husband with a smile. I need to greet my children with a smile. It needs to be all the way around. And when you walk in and you've got full of smiles and a great mood, and your wife is just kind of destroys it all. But you need to be patient and realize her chemistry is off today. She's not on the same wavelength as you. Don't lose your patience. Allow her that day. And then when she's calm, this is another mistake couples make. I was being nice. Why did you do that? No. There's a practice of patience that people don't have. You need to wait. Let this die. And then later when you speak, that thing, you could have done it like this because I thought we love each other. There's another way to approach it in another time. It shouldn't be addressed here in now immediate gratification. I need to have my rights.
And I think that's what the biggest issue here is, isn't it? That people kind of focus solely on rights, my right, my right, my right. And this is where the term tug of war is why we applied it to this topic, because
You're fighting for your rights.
All the questions and all the kind of people that come to us, it's always about, she's not giving me this, he's not giving me this, and it's just constantly pulling against right. What advice could you give, Sister Afshan, regarding when spouses are in this situation, the importance of self-reflection and maybe looking at this from a different perspective instead of my rights?
I would say number one is take care of your obligations, and you will automatically get your rights, because you're going to be pleasing Allah and doing what you need to do, and that will bring barakah. Instead of always asking, I want, learn to give and take. Yeah. So give, take care of your obligations. Obviously, the obligations are by Allah. So you'll be fulfilling your duty towards Allah. And you will, I'm telling you, automatically get your rights, inshallah. Yeah. Brother, as you were saying before, the thing is, we don't reflect enough. And, if we only reflected, like you're saying, you come to the door, you take a moment, you think, we don't do that. We live robotic lives. We're like, just full steam ahead. And that's what's caused a lot of problems. If we took a step back and we thought about things, thought about our partners, thought about our children, thought about, we wouldn't be making these kind of rash decisions or having a lot of problems in the house, emotional stuff. Yes. We don't stop and reflect. And we've been told to reflect so many times in the Quran. If we could only reflect
See,
and not be like,
do
just
people like, do
robotic.
people
I call it a
enjoy,
robotic stage. It's like,
do people enjoy taking holidays?
I love a good holiday.
Yeah, a good holiday.
A
The way
good
she says it, it's so British. Anyways, I enjoy a good holiday. Anyways, holiday. Everyone loves a holiday. My parents never took a holiday. In America, we call it vacation. In my entire life, I remember once my dad grabbed a bunch of bags of rice, threw them on the floor of the car, and then put blankets over it, and it became a camper van. And we got in this car and we went cross country. That was my first family vacation, so to speak, and we went to visit relatives. We didn't go to Disney World or anything like that. We went to visit my uncles. The rice was for my uncle. Anyways, but my dad, my father, my mother, they didn't need vacations. They didn't need a holiday. They went places, but they didn't need them. We need them. And I think that the issue is that whole media, if you're not learning from Quran and Sunnah, and you're not studying Islam, TV's teaching you. Don't worry. You're learning from movies and music.
Or social media.
Or social media, whatever. It's all entertainment. It's teaching you. So you need a holiday. So what Sister Afshan just described, Sister Afshan, to me, that moment which you said that we need to reflect, that was a holiday moment for me. Because that's what a holiday is. It's to break away, to break free. You need to get away. And you can go on a holiday and come back, and the Western world has spoiled themselves so much with holidays that now they need a holiday from the holiday. And it's exhausting to have a holiday because it's become, you have to do this, you have to buy that, you better have this, you better do that. If you don't go to that place, you didn't go on holiday. And eventually you come back exhausted. Now you need a break from your break. Whereas really the whole concept of holiday was about taking time out to reflect. And my father, I'll never forget, even when he was hammering a nail, he hit his thumb and then he started making dhikr. And I said, what did you say? He said, I was making dhikr to my Lord. I said, yeah, but what did you say? He said, I forgot to think about you and you reminded me of yourself. So when he hit his thumb, he remembered his Lord. And how's that in comparison to someone who strikes their thumb and says, blind and this and blind and that and swearing this and swearing that? Look at the sky and earth difference. So I'd like to say the vast majority of Muslims do not reflect, like you said. They don't take a moment to think. They don't do that. My brothers and sisters, how about this advice? Take a holiday for just 10 seconds. Go somewhere else. Break that psychology, that chemistry, and then address the problems you'll find, or not the problems, address life. And I also think that many people, Sister Afshan, are living for a holiday. They literally live for the holiday. The rest of the time, like you said, what you described, it's operational. They just do it in, out, day in, day out, day in, day out. And then, okay, now we're a family because we're on holiday. Or we went for something beautiful like Hajj or Umrah. Otherwise, it's Turkey or Spain or somewhere weird. But anyways, they go on these holidays and that's where they have the family time. But my brothers and sisters, life is short. Family time is right now, dinner time, lunchtime, breakfast time. Take a minute, get rid of your negative energies and then bring positivity home. That's my advice, inshallah.
Sister Afshan, we have another question here. What is gaslighting? Why do people on social media comment sections think they can claim women were never oppressed and that's going to change these women's life stories? Then all of a sudden, that none of this is going to exist. I'm not too sure what that means, but I think the commentator is asking regarding the issue of gaslighting. Many of the problems that women are facing in their marriages are kind of treated as non-problems.
I think both spouses may be facing that, depending on what the situation is of each spouse and what they are going through. So gaslighting is basically when somebody does something wrong themselves and then they'll say, well, it was your fault. So it's a bit like having this victim mentality. No matter what happens, it's like, oh, you did this, it was your fault. So a lot of people use this for as gaslighting. Maybe when it comes to domestic violence, it's like, oh, if you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have to hit you. But there's many other things as well, but I'm just giving you because it's people describe gaslighting as different things, but sometimes this is what I feel it is. It's like, you know, when they're talking to me, they think, oh, well, I didn't really do this, but he made me or she made me feel that it's my fault when it wasn't my fault.
Thank you. Thank you. Also,
I didn't understand the other bit of the question.
yeah,
So
I wasn't too sure. I wasn't too
Question.
sure about the question either. We have another question about social media shows the grass is greener on the other side, plays a huge part in unhappy marriages. We have to live in the reality. Do you stand by that statement, Sister Afshan, that some of these issues that we're having in our marriages today could be on the fact that people are watching other people's marriages and thinking, I don't have this?
I'm not entirely sure about that. That might apply when it comes to self-image. People look at other things and they want to be like that. But in marriages, I just think there's a few key elements that we are, like I said, the main thing I feel that's happening, there's a lot of confusion around to roles, and people aren't adapting to the roles. I think perhaps what may be a good thing is for us to address these issues, what people are going through, and offer solutions, like, you know, example, finance, teamwork, how to communicate. Obviously, inshallah, people read my books, but it would be good to probably speak about these things. Perhaps if people aren't speaking, because these are reoccurring things I deal with all the time. So perhaps, you know, do something around that where people are more aware.
Brother Harun asks, could you please give us the top 5 complaints or issues you come across with your clients?
I think I mentioned that before. Some of them is obviously a lack of respect. I've mentioned the fact that there's a lot of things that people get married. Before people get married, they don't ask the right questions. A lot of brothers will marry sisters who are like really high earners, doctors, and then they'll want them to have a home cooked meal when they come home, and the sister can't cook, but they never asked that question in the first place. So a lot of stuff is around the home situation and things like that. Sometimes brothers really want a wife that can just look after them, maybe like their mum, or because, you know, we have to understand how Allah has made us, and brothers, they like to be looked after, and sisters also like to be looked after as well. Again, it's that circle, isn't it? So lack of respect, household chores, organization, timekeeping, backgrounds play such an important part in marriage. And again, people don't ask the right questions. They don't ask the right questions. And issues from people's childhood. That's what I deal with most of the time anyway. People bring in like anger issues. Obviously, as being a parenting coach, sometimes we understand children learn from their parents, they mirror learn. If a parent was angry, then the child may be angry, and that's how he learns how to deal with emotions. So these I would say, the main things that I see. People think, well, people get divorced over food. They do get divorced over food. I see it all the time. Yeah. So I would say to brothers and sisters, be really clear about what you want in your spouse. If you want someone that's a homemaker, then marry a homemaker. If you want somebody who's going to be, you know, helping you build your, I don't know, get your next property, then accept that. You can't have both. That's too much to ask somebody. To spouses out there. I think I've said a lot about the background. First of all, if you haven't done that and you're all in a situation where you are not in a happy marriage, you know, just to reach out and get help, because a lot of times people come and see me after 10 years of being unhappy. Don't do that. Yeah. If there are issues, try to sort them out. Seek advice. I mean, if you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. If you have a headache, you go to the doctor. If you've got marital issues, see a therapist. Yeah, that's the best thing. Get advice, because you'll see a different perspective on things as well. And obviously, look, make lots of dua, ask Allah to guide you. And you know what? The best role model is Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And you know, study the seerah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You'll have all your answers there when it comes to marriage. You will, inshallah.